Carbon monoxide is a colorless gas that is set free when wood, petrol or coal are not completely burned. It is also in products like cigarettes. Because of it, less oxygen enters our blood and it makes us confused and sleepy. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas that gets into the atmosphere when we burn coal, oil or wood. Clean air is normally made up of nitrogen, 76%, oxygen, 22%, carbon dioxide and a few other gases. When harmful elements get into the air, they may cause health problems and can also damage the environment, buildings and soil. They make the ozone layer thinner and lead to the warming of the Earth's atmosphere and climate changes. Carbon dioxide is an important greenhouse gas. Light that enters the atmosphere, it is converted to heat. Higher amounts of CO2 make the atmosphere denser and keep it from getting out. CO2 is a gas that is highly responsible for global warming. Since the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s, the amount of CO2 in our atmosphere has risen by 40%. In the past, there were 13 government-funded searches for the sub, but, until now, none of them proved successful. When the submarine was found, Navy officials held a commemorative service for the crew that the Australian Navy had lost. Families were contacted and told that the oldest naval mystery in Australian history had finally been solved. Moscow's metro system is something special. Built in the 1930s, it was the first underground railway system in the Soviet Union. The stations have been restored as underground art museums with beautiful wall paintings and mosaic ceilings. Boat trips along the Moskva River offer a completely different view of Moscow. You can see the city's most interesting features while enjoying a comfortable ride. Almost 2 months after the successful test, later America decided to force Japan to surrender by dropping 2 nuclear bombs. The first one, a uranium bomb called Little Boy, was dropped over Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. 3 days later, Fat Man, a plutonium bomb, destroyed most of Nagasaki. The Manhattan Project helped to end World War II and marked the beginning of the atomic age. In Big Bend, Texas, where Mexico and the United States meet, local residents are mostly opposed to building a wall to keep illegal immigrants from entering the United States. Rangers who work at the national park say that the terrain is very harsh and it is nearly impossible to build a wall in this area. On the other side, building such a wall would not only affect the environment but would also damage tourism, a major source of income for the region. Archaeology is the study of buildings and objects that people made a long time ago. Archaeologists take a look at how people lived before writing was invented. They examine their daily life and what they left behind. They also try to find out why cultures and civilizations fell apart or why people of the time hunted certain animals. Television is one of our world's most important means of communication. It shows us information programs, like the news, documentaries, and sports events. We can watch films, listen to interviews and hear the sounds of events that happen far away. Television teaches us about countries and cultures and we can enjoy entertainment, like serials, comedies, game shows or sitcoms. Archaeology is the study of buildings and objects that people made a long time ago. Archaeologists take a look at how people lived before writing was invented. They examine their daily life and what they left behind. They also try to find out why cultures and civilizations fell apart or why people of the time hunted certain animals. The 1960s were an era of protest. In the civil rights movement, blacks and whites protested against the unfair treatment of races. Towards the end of the decade, more and more Americans protested against the war in Vietnam. Many people in the United States thought that Americans had no reason to fight in war that was so far away from home. Female activists demanded more rights for women, whose role in society began to change. The birth control pill and other contraceptives were introduced, making it possible for women to plan their careers and have babies when they wanted them. Two of the major events of the Cold War took place in Berlin. After World War II, the city was divided into four zones. The French, British and American zone became West Berlin and the Soviet zone became East Berlin. When the Soviets tried to cut off supply routes to the city, the Americans reacted by airlifting food, clothes and other supplies to Berlin to help the city survive. 4 years after the atomic bomb had been dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Soviets exploded their first atomic bomb and became a nuclear power. During the decades of the Cold War, both countries increased their nuclear stockpiles. They developed intercontinental missiles which could reach all corners of the world in a short time. During the 1970s, each country had enough nuclear weapons to wipe out all life on Earth. The NATO doctrine says that an attack on one of its member states is an attack on the whole organization. NATO put this policy into use for the first time after the terrorist attacks against the USA in September 2001. Although not all NATO members wanted to help the US in the fight against terrorism, the alliance supported the US in the war in Afghanistan, a country that allowed terrorists to hide. John Glenn was one of NASA's first astronauts and the first American to orbit the Earth. He belonged to the Mercury 7, a group of astronauts that would be sent into orbit at the beginning of the space race. Glenn was born in Ohio in 1921. In his early life, he was a fighter pilot in the Marine Corps during World War II and the Korean War. After the war, he attended classes at the University of Maryland where he got a degree in chemistry. Visual arts are forms of art that you can see, such as drawing, painting, sculpture, printmaking, photography and filmmaking. Design and working with textiles are also often referred to as visual art. Visual arts have changed over the centuries. During the Middle Ages, artists created paintings, sculptures or prints and became famous. Today, visual arts applies to many different forms.
Photography is making pictures by letting light through the lenses of a camera onto a film. In analog photography, light was recorded onto a film, which had to be chemically developed. Images could then be printed onto special paper. Today, most photography is digital. Cameras have no film. The images are recorded onto silicon chips.
Over history, big structures have been built for many other purposes. The Great Wall of China is the largest man-made object on Earth. It was built to keep invaders out of China. Political monuments have been built throughout history to show the power of a country or its society. Statues of the Soviet Union's founder, Lenin, are found all over Moscow and other Russian cities. Egyptian houses were made of dried mud and had flat roofs. Poor people lived in simple huts while the richer people in the cities lived in buildings that had up to 3 floors. The houses had small windows to keep out the sun and help the house stay cool. Ancient Egyptians did many different things in their free time. They liked to go swimming and fishing in the Nile River. Hunting crocodiles, lions and other wild animals were popular sports among ancient Egyptians. Most ancient Egyptians were farmers. In a country that had almost no rainfall, Egyptian farmers depended on the Nile River. They built canals to bring water from the Nile River as far into their land as possible. They also prayed that the yearly floods would make their land fertile. The main crops were wheat and barley. Some farmers produced dates, grapes and other fruits and vegetables.